But what's about that?
So have it across me?
Yeah, I think that'll be easier because it should drop down further.
Chase 5 minutes just okay.
Okay. Okay, camera's on. Is it recording? Did you see the red letters? Okay. We're recording, Mr. Bennett.
Wait, hold on, let's clarify.
And Mr. Clark.
I was about to say, which Mr. Bennett are we referring to?
Okay, so several important things this week. And hopefully they'll come back up. All right, let's talk about what you have. Your next major assignment in class is a literary synthesis essay. And a literary synthesis essay is a type of argumentative essay in which you're going to take a position relative to the work that you read, then persuade your audience to agree with you. And the proposal is due next week, and it has to be approved by your professor. Your proposal is going to include your topic of your essay, the draft thesis clearly stating your position, an overview of your main points, and your MLA citations for your sources. Got that? Okay. And while a 9 to 10 page literary synthesis paper may sound daunting over the next 4 weeks, we're going to walk through the process step by step. So just stay on your timeline that we're laying out, and it'll come across like an easy assignment. Okay, you're going to need at least 5 scholarly literary criticism sources for this paper. And that's why you need to watch the YouTube video for Tacoma Falls, the library tutorial, to help you identify scholarly sources. If you look down at week 4, you've also got some stories to read and the video resources and the journal and the threaded discussion. And then what's coming up is you've got your proposal, your online videos and Purdue readings, and then Emily Dickinson. You're going to be studying about Emily Dickinson poetry. Okay, so keep all of that in mind. I'm about to show you a super helpful video. If you're a little confused about literary analysis, watch this video. There's 3 things to remember with literary analysis. You're going to give your reason, and then your evidence, and then your explanation of your evidence. So keep that in mind as you're watching this video. Reason, evidence, explanation of evidence. And you're going to do that in each of the body paragraphs of this literary paper that you're about to write. And this is one of the best videos that I've seen that kind of walks you through this process. It's not very long. It's only about 5 or 6 minutes, and we'll take a look at this, and then I'm going to give you some resources for your literary papers.
Hello students, today I'm going to show you an example literary analysis essay so that you can know what to do when you write yours. So the first thing at the top of the page, you want to write your first and last name, my name, what block, and the date. And then you want to think of a title that tells you something about the topic that you're going to be talking about. So this literary analysis is about a short story called The Story of an Hour. So let's just talk about the components or the parts of a good literary essay. So the first thing you want to do is start with a hook. So this is a quote from someone famous. Sartre once wisely said, "Hell is other people." And this is a quote that foreshadows what the essay is going to be about. And then the next thing that this author does is she writes what short story, so the title and the author of the short story she's going to analyze, and then talks about the topic, a view of marriage. And then this author gives a very brief summary of what happens in the story. Okay, this is just a basic summary of the short story that the person read. And then here, the last sentence of the introduction paragraph is a thesis statement. We call this the thesis statement. Okay? And so there are 3 parts to a thesis statement. This basically tells your reader, it's like a map of your essay. So it tells your reader what you're going to be reading. Okay? So the claim is the first thing. So this part highlighted in yellow is your opinion about the essay. So for you, this is going to be what your opinion is about the theme of your short story or what your opinion is about the characters. So this one says, Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour expresses the oppressive nature of marriage. So it's saying the theme here is that the nature of marriage is oppressive, it's bad. And then we have this word because. This word because here is very important. You need to link your opinion with 3 reasons. Okay, so because, and then this author has 3 reasons why. And then for your body paragraph, you're going to start with your first reason, the settings reflection of Mrs. Mallard, and you're going to put that as the topic sentence of your body paragraph. Okay, so the first body paragraph needs to talk about your first reason. Okay, and so let's look at this body paragraph. After hearing of her husband's death, Mrs. Mallard quickly progresses from grief to hopefulness, a change that Chopin shows through her description of the setting. Initially, Mrs. Mallard cries, but quickly locks herself alone in her room. As she looks out the window, Mrs. Mallard could see in the open square before her house the tops of trees that were all aquiver with the new spring light. The delicious breath of rain was in the air. Mrs. Mallard immediately notices the new growth and life of the springtime, which reflects her own new life that is possible after her husband's death. Normally, a recent widow would not be using words like delicious to describe the world around them immediately after the passing of a loved one. However, Mrs. Mallard feels she has escaped the oppression of her husband and is beginning to see a new world, a world that is hers to love and explore. While she does grieve quickly for her late husband, Mrs. Mallard's view of nature and Chopin's description of the setting reveal her true feelings. So in this body paragraph, the author is doing a couple of things. She's giving evidence and explaining her evidence for this first reason. So why does she think that the setting proves that nature of marriage is oppressive? Okay, so we have a direct quote here, and you'll notice the quotation marks before and after, and then the in-text citation. Now you'll notice that really it should have the last name of the author and the page number. So that's the MLA citation. So this is her evidence. After she states her first reason, this writer puts her evidence. It's something from the story that she's going to then explain how this proves this. So after her evidence, she has her reasoning. Okay? She's saying that it's very weird that she's using words like delicious and new spring life, because these things are good, and it's unexpected to say things like that after the passing of a loved one. Okay, and then she goes on to say that the reason she does this is because she is escaping oppression of her husband. Okay, so in this body paragraph, she ends with a concluding sentence that restates the main idea of this paragraph, which is the true feelings that she has of nature, okay, through the setting. So what we see in the body paragraph is the reason that's listed in the thesis statement, the reason, the evidence, and then an explanation of how that evidence supports the reason that she gave. Okay, so reason, evidence, and then an explanation. And that's what you're going to do with the next 2 body paragraphs. It's the same thing. The second reason, more evidence from the text, and an explanation of the evidence. Okay? Reason, evidence, explanation. Okay? And in the conclusion paragraph is just a restatement of the main ideas of what was already said earlier on in the paper. And that is an example of a literary analysis essay.
Is that helpful? Yes. Okay. Right. So let's take a moment. Don't ever attempt an analysis essay without first creating an outline. I know some of you don't like to do outlines, but you really need to do the outline. And the outline is going to be a roadmap to kind of help you put in order your arguments and to make sure they're logically presented and that they flow. And so if each one of you, since I'm kind of tied up here in computer cords, I'll come get a copy of this. It'll give you a chance to get up and stretch for a second. Come get a copy of your outline and your... That's an example. If you'll get that, we're going to go over it real quick. Gentlemen, come get a copy of this. Okay, let's go over this. So first, you want to have a catchy title. Next, the first page to page 1 to 1.5. You're going to use the hat map technique. You're going to have a hook, you're going to have your author and your title and your main characters and a summary of the story. So remember, you're analyzing a piece of literature, so you're going to want to put all of that in there. And then you're going to create your thesis statement. So look at that first paragraph up there and you can kind of see they've got a hook, and then the hook is the quote. They used a quote. They describe the book in terms of the author, the title, the main characters, and a summary of the story. And then they created their thesis statement. The second section is page 2 and 3. You're going to present your first argument. You're going to have a topic sentence, what the paragraph's going to discuss, and how it's going to prove your thesis. So, the body of your paragraph should logically and fully develop and support your thesis. Each body page should focus on one main idea that supports your thesis statement. So the topic sentence is going to state the main point of the page. It's going to serve kind of as a mini thesis for the page. You might think of it as a signpost for your readers or a headline, something that alerts them to the most important. It has interpretive points in your essay. It might be helpful to think of a topic sentence as working in 2 directions simultaneously. It relates the paragraph to the essay's thesis and thereby acts as a signpost for the argument of the paper as a whole. But it also defines the scope of the paragraph itself. So far you've got the introduction with describing the story. It has got to have a hook. Remember, hooks can be a startling fact or information, a meaningful quote, a vivid, rich description, an analogy, a metaphor, and then you have kind of a synopsis of the story, which is kind of something interesting. You don't have to retell the entire story. Present your opinion or your claim with your reasons, and then have your body paragraph. So we've gotten through the topic sentence of the body paragraph. Next, we have the context for the quote. Who says it? What is happening in the text when they say it? This prepares the reader for the quote introduced by introducing the speaker, the setting, or the situation. And then you want to have the actual quote, a specific example that's from the work, used to provide evidence for your topic support, your topic sentence, or your support thesis. Then you're going to do your commentary, your explanation or interpretation of the concrete detail. Commentary explains how the concrete detail proves the thesis. Expert evidence supports the analysis, which is a quote from a scholarly source or literary critique. And then you're going to have a discussion of the expert evidence, and then the clincher or concluding paragraph. So the discussion explains how you're proving your argument. The clincher or conclusion is the last paragraph. So your entire body is going to be that. You're going to have probably 3 paragraphs at least. Your first argument, your second argument, and your third argument. I'm sorry. Those will take a couple of pages each to walk through those with your arguments. Remember, topic, sentence, that's your reason, your evidence, and your explanation of the evidence. And then finally, you're going to have your conclusion. Your conclusion is the last paragraph where you're given one last chance to convince the reader or your grading professor of your claim, your opinion, and provide a sense of closure. Summarize your argument and extend your argument. Now here's where a lot of the students have gotten in trouble in this class before. They think these discussion posts and things like that, oh, I'm getting hundreds on those. This is going to be a snap with this paper. No, it was not a snap the first time we went through this class. So make sure that you take this paper really seriously and you actually, do the analysis work. So summarize your argument and extend your argument. And a sophisticated conclusion does not simply restate the thesis of the introduction or summarize the logic presented in the body of the essay. Your conclusion will try to suggest the broader significance of your discussion. Why is it important? Okay? Why is it important? Not just, restating the same facts. Questions about a literary analysis outline. There is a copy of this on the Teacher Grading class page. There's also a copy of an outline template. It's an outline template with exactly line by line, kind of for you to follow. You just have to fill in the lines. So you can take what your topic's going to be, print that template, and just fill it all in with your notes. And then voila, you're halfway done with your paper, because then you're just creating it based on that outline. Use the outline template. I promise it'll help you.
How long does this have to be again?
This is a 9 to 10 page paper before works cited.
That's like 21.
9 to 10 pages. Notice on here, you've got, 2 pages for the first argument, 2 to 3. The conclusion should probably be about 2 pages. So, this is a long, serious paper. And, what's the old joke? How do you eat an elephant?
Oh, one bite.
One bite at a time.
Oh.
So the first bite is you figure out what you're going to do for your works and what your argument is. Next bite, print that outline template that your secret helper has put on her
Right.
class page.
I prefer to eat the elephant whole.
This is basically like the final.
Pardon?
I prefer to eat the elephant whole in one sitting.
I would not recommend that at all.
That's what I did with this last paper. Oops.
Well, let's see what you're doing.
I did it in 6 hours.
Well, speaking of that, don't forget to be sending me your grades
I just did it last night.
so you
You
have
have your grade for me.
high school credit for this class. So make sure you're sending me your grades. All right, questions about the parts of the essay, about what, the outline part, things like that. Before we keep going. Because this is such a big, critical project. I don't want you to be unsuccessful. All right, your proposal that's due this week. Has anybody got their proposal finished? Have you started?
Into the week, no.
I don't know. It's due on Monday.
It's due on Monday.
Wait,
It's-
like the 21st. Oh. I was like, yesterday, what? It's not.
Yes, anyway.
Okay, well, it's due Monday, but today's the 15th, so that's, this coming Monday is the 21st. You've got to have a topic. This can be from the topics given or one you create yourself, but you have to get approval from the professor before you move on. Next, you have to have a thesis statement. State what your argument is, what you're going to be proving in the essay, and how or why you think the argument is true. It's called the so what statement. So if you make a statement and then the professor said, so what? Then you've got to be able to have a thesis statement that backs it up. Briefly state a few supporting points, potential paragraph points that you'll be analyzing in your essay to help you prove your thesis statement. This is so the professor can see if you're on the right track with your argument and how you're going to go about proving it in your essay. And then list of scholarly sources you'll be using. You've got to have 5. All internet sources require a complete URL as part of the MLA formatted reference. And I would include access dates. Some professors prefer those, some don't. I know when I was an English professor at a college, I required access dates. Okay, so that way I knew who waited 6 hours before to do their project and who had been working on it for weeks. Little note there,
I would have mine the night before. That would be embarrassing.
yeah.
That's why we don't follow cases.
Mine is
I will tell you right now that your professor is smarter than you think they are, and they will show more mercy and grace to somebody who didn't start at 6 hours before. Let's see. We talked about the outline. Don't upload your outline, just the proposal. Okay, you have to create your own proposal. You can't upload the outline. What are some ideas of topics that you're thinking about? Has anybody even thought of one?
I mean, we could do stories, like, we could do Goodman and Brown and stuff like that, right? That's kind of what I'm looking towards that.
And sometimes it's comparing two stories.
What's the criteria?
So I'm not sure I have a copy of the criteria in front of me.
You can just look on that.
Really?
I don't know if this is current, but this is what I've seen in the past. Some of it may be choose 4 or 5 symbols in Young Goodman Brown and describe how these symbols suggest the story's theme. Why does Goodman Brown lose his faith? Write a cause and effect essay discussing both the reasons and effect. I'm not saying these are options for this time. You'll have to check that with your professor. Discuss the role of male power in Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper. How is it shaped by patriarchy, and what effect does this have on its female characters and how the reader perceives them? Compare and contrast a jury of her peers with The Yellow Wallpaper. How is female identity affected in both stories, and why is this important? So these are examples of things in the past. Okay? Questions about that?
It seems like it's gonna be pretty difficult.
It's not something you can write the night before.
I mean, honestly, because like with our other paper, we had to come up with our topic and like make all this stuff. Like with this, you can. I feel like it would be easier easier to like dissect like something than just to,
Right, this is dissecting it. The big thing about this is you've got to know how to, do your quotes and do all of that. It may be an analysis paper. It may be a little bit of comparison, contrast. It may be context. It just follow the guidelines that your professors laid out as to what they expect for this paper. When in doubt, ask your professor. I'm just here to help. The study.com videos will help you a lot as you're analyzing these works. Can everybody access those? Okay. The literary analysis video I have put on the class link page. I think I did that last night or the night before. So you should have access to this if you want to walk back through it for some help. Let me see, there was something else. Okay. So who read Two Kinds by Amy Tran? Did y'all read the story?
Did you remember that?
I read it.
I don't think I got to that.
I read it in my sleep.
Okay. Well, that's going to make it pretty hard for us to have a discussion. So, all right, we're going to watch the video and then we'll talk about it. So maybe you can at least pick up on the story with the video.
Amy Tan published her well-known novel, The Joy Luck Club, in 1989. Based on Tan's own experiences, the book centers upon the friendships and lives of 4 Chinese women who play mahjong together. While the book has a unifying plot, it's organized into a series of standalone stories or vignettes, which illustrate important aspects of the characters' personalities or relationships. One of these vignettes is Two Kinds. Common themes or main topics in the Joy Luck Club include generational differences among Chinese American families, as well as mother-daughter relationships, specifically the one shared by Jingmei Wu and her mother, Suyin Wu. In Two Kinds, Suyin believes with enough determination and hard work, children in America can become anything they want, even a genius or prodigy. Her difficult past in China, during which she lost her first husband and 2 babies, plays a large role in the hopeful way she embraces the American dream, or the belief that anyone in America can succeed. Su Yan pushes Jing Mei into various activities, hoping that one will reveal a hidden talent. The story implies that this attitude is common among Su Yan's generation, as her friends like to brag to each other about their children's talents. As a child, Jing Mei resents the way in which Suyin pushes her into various activities, especially piano. And the more she feels like she is disappointing her mother with her lack of talent, the more she deliberately tries to sabotage her own progress. Jing Mei doesn't like how Suyin compares her to other children her age who have special talents. The conflict comes to a head when Jing Mei flat out refuses to play anymore and tells her mother that she wishes she was dead like them, a reference to the babies her mother lost in China during her previous marriage. No one touches the piano for many years until Suyin gives Jing Mei the piano and tells her daughter she was the only one in the family who could play. Jing Mei understands the gesture is a peace offering, as well as a symbol of their relationship. Two Kinds, as well as other stories from the Joy Luck Club, shows how reflecting on one's past can help shed light and understanding on one's relationships. As an adult, Jing Mei is better able to understand her mother's good intentions and point of view, which as a child just seemed like disappointment, pressure, and unrealistic expectations. Two Kinds is significant as a title because at a tense point in the story when Jing Mei refuses to play the piano, Suyin tells her that there are only 2 kinds of daughters, those who are obedient and those who follow their own mind. Only one kind of daughter can live in this house, obedient daughter. As a Chinese immigrant, Suyin values obedience. Jing Mei's perceived lack of musical talent was not her mother's biggest disappointment, but rather her failure to honor her mother's wishes by trying her best and making a commitment to improve. While this title is taken from this specific quote, it is also meant to highlight the differences between the two women's generations and personalities. At the end of the story, Jing Mei brings the piano from her parents' house to her own. She finds some old sheet music for 2 songs and tries to play them. The title of one is Pleading Child, and the other is Perfectly Contented. Jing Mei soon realizes that they were 2 halves of the same song. The titles of the songs represent the harmony that Jing Mei feels, as well as the new insight she has on her relationship with her mother. Amy Tan's story Two Kinds works independently or as part of her novel, The Joy Luck Club. As a vignette or standalone story, it serves as an illumination of 2 important themes or main topics. These include the generational differences in immigrant families and complicated mother-daughter relationships. The title of the story refers to a statement made by Su Yan, a Chinese immigrant, to her daughter Jing Mei, in which she says there are 2 kinds of daughters, those who are obedient and those who follow their own minds. Su Yan and Jing Mei each have a different understanding of the American dream, with Su Yan hoping that her daughter will become a piano prodigy. Su Yan's aspirations for her daughter result in a rift, and Jing Mei stops playing the piano. However, Su Yan also heals the rift when she makes a gift of the piano to Jing Mei and lets her adult daughter know that she was the only member of the family who could play.
Okay, so let's discuss our story a little bit. The story focuses on 2 main characters, the mother, Mrs. Wu, and her daughter, June Wu. And it chronicles events in June's childhood that led her to feelings of regret in adulthood. And you were probably confronted with a lot of things thinking about your own childhood, and let's talk about some of these questions. So how would you compare your own upbringing to that of June's? Have your parents ever tried to, like, in the story, her mother kept trying to force her to be a prodigy at something. She wanted her to be a genius at something. And she tried all different things. And then finally, the piano was kind of the last one. Anybody had that experience? Where they wanted you to be like a superstar sports figure, or they wanted you to learn the violin, or they wanted you to learn something.
My parents, as long as they've always told me this, as long as I can remember, as long as you do your best, that's all we can ask for.
That's exactly what that's saying. They've
Good.
never like tried to force me to do anything. It's more like, oh, this is what you love and you want to be good at that, then like that's
Good. Do you think that's kind of an American culture mindset
yeah.
versus maybe other cultures? Maybe some other cultures in the world push children to do something even if it's not something that they
Yes.
particularly love in some cultures. Okay. Do you resist the rules like June does? June was very resistant to rules.
That's what I'm saying.
Huh?
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
No, I was just
You wanna add something there?
No, I got nothing.
So, do you resist the rules? Doesn't mean you always break them, but do you just resist rules? Would you prefer to make up your own mind to follow the rules?
I mean, it kind of depends.
That's part of everybody.
Yeah, it depends on what rules. Like, when it comes to my parents, they don't really have rules. It's more just like, it's more like relational, like kind of stuff like that. So then, like, of course, I like respect them and everything. So I want to do like what they want me to do. You know? It's kind of like that thing, but it can be like, I mean, I'm not gonna be good at I don't know.
Yeah, there's a verse in the Bible, John 14:15. If you love me, you will obey my commands. And I've always thought that if you love the person, then you want to obey because you know that what they are telling you to do is for your very best. And some people obey out of fear, and some people obey out of wanting a reward. But to obey out of love is the greatest obedience. So, very interesting. What impact does her performance at the talent show have on her relationship with her mother? And if you didn't read the story, she was supposed to prepare for a talent show, and she didn't want to practice. She just didn't do her very best, and therefore thoroughly embarrassed her parents. So what performance do you think it had on her relationship with her mother?
Not very good.
Not good because it would have caused disappointment, and what the parents might probably have been embarrassed because I could just think if they had told everyone that their daughter's gonna do this, and then they get really excited about it,
And the other
no,
children,
then their parents would probably be embarrassed.
and the other children obviously performed quite well at the talent show because they had practiced and prepared. Have you ever had that kind of experience where maybe all of you said your parents are always very supportive, make sure you do your best, but has there been a time where you just didn't really do your best? Maybe you procrastinated practicing or waited till the last minute to do something and maybe just didn't do quite your best, and you ended up disappointing them or someone. Everybody's nodding their heads, but
I can't think of like a specific
I
time.
think it happens with me with school sometimes.
with school sometimes procrastinating.
It's not so much of like, I think, okay, well, I'm just gonna do it later. I just get distracted and start thinking about something else and start doing something else. And then an hour and a half later, I remember I had to do school.
Right.
So yeah, that, but
Okay. What important lesson is revealed at the end of the story that's probably relatable to all readers? Do y'all remember? Do you remember because you read it? What was the lesson that was at the end of the story? I was going to pull up the story. These stories aren't very long. If you're thinking, oh, I don't want to read this, it takes like 5 minutes. It's like 2 or 3 pages of the story. And like she obviously saw the 2 pieces of music, and one said perfectly contented and the other one said pleading child. And it was 2 pieces of the same music. Pleading child was shorter but slower, and perfectly contented was longer but faster. What do you think that line means for the story?
Wait, what was the first part you said?
Pleading child was shorter but slower, and perfectly contented was longer but faster.
I guess it could mean like to be content. Maybe it means like, I don't know. Longer than and like
Shorter but slower, and for a pleading child.
Children are slow.
and you're not.
I'm not saying that. You're right.
Which character reminds you most of yourself, and why? Are you more like June, the daughter who resisted? Or are you more like the mother who gets in, who, you know?
I don't think any of us have any children, so I don't see how we can relate to
Well,
More like her personality.
More like the personality. Your perspective on the world changes dramatically when you do become a parent. So you don't realize that you can love anybody that much. So it's just you love your child so much. And it goes back to that obedience. I don't think anybody asks their child, you know, you want what's best for that child. Can you think of people in your life that match the characters in the story? Do you have a friend that maybe has a parent that's, you've seen them push that person? Oh, be the best, be the best. I'm sure that happens lots of times with
That happens
athletics.
always when there's a dad coaching baseball or football.
Yes.
That always
I
happens.
feel like a lot of times it's just like.
Anytime you have a parent coaching a sport and their kid is in their team,
Oh yeah, there's.
it becomes like where, you know, it's okay if everyone else messes up, but if their kid messes up,
They're on them.
Sleep outside.
they're in trouble.
You can sleep outside and change to a tree.
So what would be the parent's right response when their kid messes up?
No.
These days, beat them.
And try to uplift them, because like the kid's probably beating themselves up enough already, and so
Beat
I
them.
feel like the right response would be to like uplift them and be like, hey, it's okay, like shake it off, you got it.
Right.
Rather than getting mad at them,
Yeah.
because I mean, there could be something going on that you might not necessarily, depending on how close
Okay, you're absolutely right if the circumstance is the kid tried their best.
But
What if it's like the example he gave of maybe they procrastinated or
At that point.
Then they
it's
get-
okay.
Yeah.
it's okay?
It's definitely okay to go.
Yeah. So, or do you let them learn and grow by the mistake? So, okay, you procrastinated, you messed this up, now you've
They
learned the
won't.
lesson,
Yeah.
hopefully.
They won't want you to.
That's more of what my parents say.
Yeah.
So,
It's your grade, and if you mess it up, I feel bad, you know.
you have to give them room to fail. As you get older, you'll see that your parents kind of start backing up and giving you more and more room to fail. And but they're still there in case they don't want you to make a huge life-changing mistake, because there's some mistakes you can't. It's pretty hard to recover from. It's got life-altering consequences. But that's where we've got the goodness of mercy and grace. Jesus forgives all. So it doesn't have eternal consequences, but it definitely has life-altering consequences. So did you notice anything else in the story? Anything else that you found interesting?
I mean, I just kind of find it interesting how like, because the mom was an immigrant and like grew up in a different time, they obviously have very different outlooks and like opinions of.
I think it was because she didn't grow up with the
abilities.
resources that her daughter had to be able to be great.
So she
And
wanted her to take advantage.
She wanted to take advantage because she knows what it's like to not have those resources.
That's another sign of your parents' love for you is that they want you to have a better life than they did. They want you to have more opportunities than what they had. So we always want it better for our kids than we had it. And that goes back to that love. They love you, so they want what's best for you, so it's easier to obey them. Would you rather be a pleading child or a perfectly contented one?
Depends.
Perfectly content.
Yeah.
Right, and so perfectly contented sometimes is longer to come to the realization of how to be perfectly contented, but at the same time it has longer term results. And if you'll just cooperate with your parents and cooperate with the authority in your life, including God, if you cooperate with that authority, then you're going to be perfectly contented and not constantly the pleading child. So, excellent discussion for all of you. I appreciate that. And let me turn this off and we'll